like you. Be strong to hold the powers of the sun. To dream, believe in strength. Now I'm the only one.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Diorpop, a space where we talk about emotions behind the moments, the stories fans create, and the quiet connections that often speak louder than words. Today, we're gently clarifying one story that sparked many feelings after a recent live, and reminding ourselves where imagination ends and respect begins. After the live finally ended, the screen faded to black, but the emotions did not. If anything, they intensified. What was supposed to be the quiet conclusion of a simple broadcast instead became the beginning of 1,000 interpretations. A soft smile lingering on Jungkook's lips. The way Jimin paused, almost as if he was listening to something we could not hear, before pressing the button to end the stream. A silence that lasted only seconds, yet felt heavy with meaning. Within minutes, the fandom was awake in full force. Comments multiplied. Clips were replayed in slow motion. Screenshots were zoomed in, analyzed, and compared. And soon, one sentence appeared everywhere, whispered and shouted at the same time. They kissed after the live. It is important to pause here, not to judge, not to mock, but to understand. Because what happened next was not deception. It was not manipulation. It was emotion overflowing into imagination. The narrative of Jikook kissing after the live is fanfiction. It is not a hidden truth waiting to be uncovered. It is not a secret moment accidentally exposed. It is a story created by fans, born from affection, from longing, from years of watching two people grow side by side and develop a bond that feels unusually tender and sincere. Fanfiction is often misunderstood. Many reduce it to delusion, but that is far from the truth. Fanfiction is not about forcing reality to bend. It is about interpreting emotion through creativity. It is a language fans use when feelings exceed what can be shown on a screen. When reality gives just enough warmth to inspire stories, but not enough detail to satisfy the heart. Jikook's connection has always lived in that delicate space. Not loud, not performative, but quiet, consistent, and deeply familiar. They share a comfort that does not require explanation. A closeness that feels lived in, not staged. Years of shared rooms, shared stages, shared exhaustion, shared dreams. So when fans see Jungkook soften around Jimin, or Jimin instinctively gravitate toward Jungkook, imagination fills the gaps. After the live, the imagination worked overtime. What if, once the cameras were off, they turned to each other? What if there was a laugh, a sigh of relief? What if that silence we felt was actually a moment meant only for them? And then, gently, the story grows. A step closer. A hug. A kiss. But we must be clear, there is no evidence. No confirmation. No statement. No proof beyond interpretation. And acknowledging this does not weaken the fandom. It strengthens it. Clarifying that this narrative is fanfiction is not an attempt to erase romance or shame imagination. It is an act of respect toward the artists and toward ourselves as fans. Because love that is healthy understands boundaries. It knows the difference between what is felt and what is fact. What we see on screen are fragments. What fans create are continuations. And continuations are allowed to exist, as long as they are not mistaken for reality. Jikook do not owe us private moments. They do not owe us confirmation. Their bond does not need to be proven through physical gestures witnessed by millions. In fact, part of why their connection feels so powerful is because it remains largely unspoken. It exists in looks that last half a second too long. In instinctive movements. In trust that does not demand explanation. Reducing that bond to a single imagined kiss would actually diminish it. Because Jikook's intimacy is not defined by one dramatic act, but by consistency. By showing up for each other in quiet ways. By choosing each other in moments when no one is watching, or when everyone is, and they still feel safe. Fanfiction steps in where reality stays silent. It is poetry, not journalism. It is emotion, not documentation. And poetry is meant to be felt, not verified. So when stories spread about Jikook kissing after the live, let them be enjoyed for what they are, a reflection of love, not a claim of truth. Let them exist in the space where imagination is free but reality is respected. We can smile at the idea without insisting it happened. We can feel warmth without demanding proof. We can love deeply without crossing lines. And perhaps that is the most beautiful part of all. Because the safest love is the one that does not need certainty to survive. The strongest affection is the one that knows when to stop imagining and simply appreciate what already exists. Jikook's story does not need to be rewritten to be meaningful. It already is. Fanfiction is just our way of saying, what you give us matters, even in the smallest moments. And maybe that is enough. Because when we strip away the noise, the theories, and the endless replaying of seconds that were never meant to carry such heavy expectations, what remains is something far more grounded and far more beautiful. What remains is trust. Trust that what Jimin and Jungkook share is real in the way that matters most to them, not in the way fans demand to see. Trust that closeness does not always announce itself through dramatic gestures. Sometimes it exists in routine, in familiarity, in the ease of being able to sit in silence without feeling the need to fill it. The fascination with what happens after the live says more about the fandom than it does about Jikook. It reveals how deeply people crave reassurance, proof that the warmth they feel is mutual, that the comfort they sense is not imagined. And that craving is human. When we love something deeply, we want it to be confirmed, validated, sealed with something undeniable. But real connections are rarely that performative. If there truly was a moment after the cameras turned off, it belongs to them. And if there wasn't, the bond we already witnessed does not suddenly lose its meaning. Because intimacy is not created by a kiss, it is revealed through years of choosing each other in countless small ways. Jimin has always had a way of grounding Jungkook. A quiet steadiness, a softness that feels safe. Jungkook, in turn, mirrors that care with presence, by staying close, by listening, by being there without needing to be asked. These are not things you can fabricate for a live broadcast. They are habits formed over time. This is why fanfiction emerges so naturally around them. It is not born from nothing. It grows from patterns fans have observed for years. From consistency. From emotional continuity. Fanfiction is not denial of reality. It is an emotional response to it. Still, there is a line, and honoring that line is essential. When stories are presented as imagination, they can be healing, comforting, even beautiful. But when imagination is mistaken for fact, it risks turning love into pressure. It risks turning admiration into entitlement. And that is something no artist deserves. Clarifying that the kiss after the live is fanfiction is not a rejection of the story. It is a reminder of responsibility. We can create, but we must also protect. We can imagine, but we must not demand. Because the moment fandom crosses that boundary, the warmth we celebrate can quickly become a weight. Jikook have spent years under constant observation. Every glance dissected. Every word reinterpreted. And yet, despite that, they continue to move with a comfort that feels unshaken. That alone should tell us something important. Whatever they share, it is resilient enough to exist without public validation. Perhaps the most loving thing fans can do is allow that space. To let moments be moments. To let silence remain silence. To let what is unseen stay unseen. Fanfiction will always exist, and that is okay. It is part of fandom culture. It is part of how people connect, cope, and express affection. But clarity is what keeps that culture healthy. So let the story of Jikook kissing after the live remain where it belongs, in the realm of imagination, poetry, and emotion. Not as evidence, not as expectation, but as a soft thought that warms the heart without claiming ownership. Because in the end, the most meaningful connections are not the ones we invent, but the ones we respect. And maybe that is the real lesson behind all of this. Love does not need to be proven. Closeness does not need to be exposed. And some moments, whether real or imagined, are most beautiful when they are simply held, gently and from a distance.